Hello, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. Welcome to this training. This is going to be the Soy Excellence Center training, poultry track, basic level. My name is Wilmer Pacheco. I am an extension specialist and associate professor in the Department of Poultry Science at Auburn University. In this training, I'm going to give you 9 lectures, and then at the end of each lecture, you are going to have 5 questions that you need to answer before you move to the next presentation. So let's go ahead and start. This first presentation is entitled Fundamentals of Poultry Production and Management. The objectives of this presentation is to know the origin of birds and some general terms. We also get a good understanding of the anatomy of the birds, and towards the end of the presentation I'm going to talk about an overview of breeds and their different production purposes. Chickens originated in Southeast Asia and they were domesticated more than 8,000 years ago. However, they were not domesticated for a meat or egg production. But in reality, they were domesticated because cockfighting was a very popular sport. However, they quickly realized that in the jungle, a bird will lay around 12 eggs per year. However, when they had more access to more feed and nutrients, they were able to produce more than 12 eggs. The other nice characteristic about these birds is that they didn't need a lot of space, so people could move them from one town to another. Later, the birds were moved to Eastern Europe, and here the Egyptians learned how to do incubation. And the incubation, you can see they use these ovens, and they did that more than 3,000 years ago, and they still do it. And that incubation process helped to free some of the time of the mother hen, so the mother hen could continuously produce more eggs. And then the chicks were brought to the Americas. If we look today, the number of farm animals, at any time there are going to be about 23 billion birds. If you compare this with other farm animals, there are going to be 3 times more birds than all the other farm animals combined. So you probably are asking yourself, why so many chickens? Well, we need to remember that chicken meat is affordable. If you compare the price of chickens with other meats, chicken is going to be typically a lower price. Chicken is healthy, and I'm not gonna compare like the nutritional composition, but we know that chicken is gonna have more protein, is gonna have less saturated fats compared to other meats. We all know that is delicious, and also chicken meat is sustainable. And the sustainability of the chicken meat has been a big effort of the whole industry, because we got the genetic companies always selecting birds with the desired characteristics, chickens that are more efficient in converting feed into meat. We also know better the nutritional requirements of the birds. We have better control of their health and the management of the farm, among others. Also, we need to remember that chicken meat is universally appreciated, and the poultry industry has been able to innovate and take research-based decisions. So if you look the price of a pound of chicken adjusted for inflation, in the middle of the Great Recession in 1934, producing 1 pound of chicken will cost you around $2.32. However, by 2004, producing a pound of chicken will cost around 45 cents. And in 2020, producing a pound of chicken was 37 cents. I haven't looked what is the average price this year and the last year, and it might be a little bit higher because we know, like, ingredient prices are higher, but like the production costs are still fairly low compared to other type of meats. We also need to look, the population growth. If you look in 2019, we had about 7.7 billion inhabitants in the planet. But by 2050, we are going to have 9.7 billion. So basically, everyone who works in agriculture needs to be able to produce more efficient. And I'm really proud of the advancements that the poultry industry has been doing, because I think we are going to be able to produce enough meat to be able to feed 9.7 billions by 2050. And another thing that is important to mention in this graph is that if you look the annual growth rate that looks kind of in purple, you can see that the annual growth rate is going down, and in 2019 was 1.08 and continues to go down, and in 2100 is going to be only a 0.1. However, the growth population continues to increase because now we live longer. If we look at the life expectancy has increased around 15 years in the last 50 years. So before I start, talking about like the anatomy of the chickens and the different breeds, I would like to discuss some general terminology that is going to be helpful. So layers are birds reared for egg production. Broilers are going to be birds reared for meat production. Breeders are chickens whose offsprings are used to produce broilers, and turkeys are birds reared for meat production. However, at least in the US, turkeys are usually consumed during a special occasion. So maybe of you have already heard about the Thanksgiving. That will be, a special occasion where, people in the US consumes a lot of turkeys. However, throughout the year, people still consume turkeys, mainly like turkey ham. So just looking, like the structure of poultry, they are, warm-blooded vertebrate animals. Let's remember that chickens evolved to fly, so they have a short intestine. And to compensate for this short intestine, chickens have a strong reverse peristalsis. And that reverse peristalsis is controlled by the gizzard, which is the mechanical stomach. And the gizzard is located just after the true or glandular stomach, which is the proventriculus. And since poultry have no teeth, this muscular stomach sometimes is called the bird's teeth, as it mechanically grinds and mixes the feed. So chicken surface is covered by feather, skin, and scales. The feathers are going to be composed mainly of keratin. There are two very important amino acids, for feathers, which is going to be like methionine and cysteine. Feathers are also going to be important to provide insulation in cold temperatures, and also the feathers can repel rain and snow. And in some species, like the colors of the feather can help to attract, birds from the same species. The skin, let's remember that chickens have absence of glands except for the urophygeal gland. So because they don't have sweat glands, birds cannot sweat. Also, the color of the skin is going to be pink clear, and the color of the skin is gonna be correlated with the amount of pigments that they consume. So for example, you can see in the picture on the right where you have wheat and corn, and if you are feeding just wheat, soybean meal based diets, and you pay attention to the coloration of the skin and the coloration of the feet, you are going to see that with wheat you are going to obtain very pale color. If you have corn, because corn have more pigments, then you can see some of the coloration. However, that desired coloration is going to be influenced by the final customers. There are some markets where they really like to see like the chicken yellow, and also the yolk. They want a yolk that is almost orange. So in this case, an alternative is to use some natural or synthetic pigments. And as you can see in the right, I have a picture of a marigold flower that can be used to increase the pigmentation. And the scales are gonna be mainly yellow color. So moving on, the skeleton supports the body and the muscular system. The rib cage protects vital organs, and some bones in the chickens are hollow and are connected to the respiratory system. Let's remember again, birds evolved to fly, and most bones are light but strong. Also, something very important is that the composition of the feed plays an important role in bone development. So we need to pay attention to the calcium levels, phosphorus, vitamin D, and a lot of microminerals, which are going to play a very important role in bone development. In addition, chickens have a medullary bone, and this is formed in the marrow of the long bones of chickens, starting around 10 days before egg production begins. And this medullary bone is most clearly seen in the shaft of the femur. This bone is used for a calcium homeostasis during egg production, and most of the calcium used for egg production comes from the feed eaten each day. However, let's remember that like when you are producing commercial layers, then they are going to have a dark periods where they are not going to be consuming a lot of feed, so they are going to be mobilizing some of this calcium from the medullary bone for eggshell formation. Regarding the muscles, breast muscles have increased through genetic selection, and chickens contain white and red muscles, and so we can have a white meat and dark meat, more fat and iron, which the dark meat contains more fat and iron due to more movement. I don't know if you remember, but like a few years ago, when there was an issue with the African swine fever in China and in, I think, China and other Asian countries, then they had to reduce the swine herd. So the pork became really expensive. So a lot of like the people move more to buy dark meats, in this case the thighs. So the characteristics and the flavor is going to change between white meat and dark meat. So this is what I was mentioning in the previous slide about like muscle development. Improvements in genetic selection have allowed the birds to grow at a steady pace, and then they can reach market weight in shorter time. But also, like modern broilers, they are going to have a higher breast meat yield. And in this slide, you can compare a chicken from 1957, and you can see that that bird will take 120 days to reach 3.1 pounds. With improvements in genetic selection in 2007, a bird could reach 4.5 pounds in 35 days, with a feed conversion of 1.55. And before I move on, I would like to explain, that concept of feed conversion. 1.55 means that a bird needs to consume 1.55 pounds of feed to gain a pound of live weight. So as if the feed conversion is lower, that means that the birds are more efficient converting, feed into meat. And then you can see by 2019, a bird could reach 4.5 pounds in 33 days. But now with a better feed conversion, instead of 1.55, 1.40. And then I was looking the performance objectives for last year, and last year a bird could gain, a male broiler could gain 4.5 pounds in 32 days with a feed conversion of 1.32. So you can see that we are being able to get to the market weight in a shorter time with better feed conversion ratio. So all this helps to increase the sustainability of the poultry industry. And moving on, remember that respirations in birds is much different than in humans or other mammals. So in the birds, the lungs are small compared to those of mammals, but are supplemented or complemented by air sacs. The lungs contract slightly and there is no true diaphragm. There are 4 pairs of air sacs divided into the cranial and the caudal. The cranial include the pair cervical, the unpaired clavicular, and the pair cranial air sacs. And the caudal includes the pair caudal and the pair abdominal air sacs, as you can see in the picture in the right. Air moves in and out of the air sacs, but the lungs are the responsible for the breathing. Remember too, and I'm going to discuss this later, the lungs can serve as a cooling mechanism when moisture is exhaled in the form of a water vapor. And also just to just give you more details about this part of the respiratory systems, the bird's lungs are relatively small in proportion to body size when compared to other mammals. They are only half of the size of the mammalian lung, and a mammal's lungs are made up of millions of tiny balloons called alveoli, which expands and contract as the animal breathes. In the other hand, birds' lungs are not elastic and they don't change size when the birds breathe. So now let's move to the digestive system, and remember, birds have a short intestine and therefore must digest and absorb nutrients quickly. Some of the functions of the digestive system are soften feed particles to stimulate digestion, collect and grind large particles, absorb, recycle and excrete substances, and produce and eliminate feces. As you can see, the digestive system of the chickens are fairly short, and then you can separate the functions in 4 different functions. The ingestion of the feed by the mouth, then there is going to be some storage of feed in the crop, and then the digestion of proteins is going to start in the proventriculus, and there is going to be also digestion by pancreatic enzymes in the duodenum, and then in the small intestine there is going to be some absorption of the nutrients, and then we are going to have the excretion of the excess of nutrients. So the idea here is that if you look that our gastrointestinal tract is short, we need to make sure that we have good absorption of nutrients in the upper part of the intestine. That way there are less nutrients available for bacteria in the lower part. So now I'm going to discuss the different parts of the digestive system. We are going to start with the crop. The crop is an evolutionary adaptation. Birds don't need to stay on the ground when they are collecting their feed, so they could get to the ground quickly, store the feed in the crop, and fly away. So the function of the crop is to temporarily store the feed consumed to adjust the speed of delivery to the digestive system. The size and shape vary according to the species of the birds. And here in the crop, there is going to be some fermentation through the production of short-chain fatty acids, lactic acids, that is going to be produced by lactobacilli. And here in the crop, the pH is going to be reduced to around 5.5. Then the next place where the feed is going to go to is going to be the gizzard and the proventriculus. And these organs both make up the stomach. And there is going to be some chemical digestion and mechanical digestion. The proventriculus is going to be responsible for chemical digestion, and this is the true stomach or the glandular stomach. The proventriculus produces and releases gastric secretions such as pepsin and hydrochloric acids. So pepsin is going to be an enzyme that is very important to start protein digestion, and hydrochloric acids is going to help to decrease the pH of the feed. Then the feed is going to move to the gizzard, and then the gizzard is going to be producing some grinding and mixing. And the gizzard is the mechanical stomach, and the gizzard acts as a replacement for a bird's teeth, grinds feed into small particles. And again, all this is, adaptation is for survival. Less time spent on the ground chewing the feed. And the other part that is important here to mention is that gizzard is going to establish the rate of passage into the small intestine. So one of my research areas. We are always looking what will be like the optimum particle size of the feed to promote good gizzard development and a good reverse peristalsis. As I was telling you before, if we have a good reverse peristalsis and we have good digestion of feed in the upper part, there are going to be less nutrients available in the lower part of the intestine. And the other part that I'm going to remember here, so you are clear, there is going to be a lot of gastric reflux. So the feed is not going to be moving in one direction. So the feed can go to the gizzard, get ground and mixed, and then come back to the proventriculus to get re-exposed to pepsin and hydrochloric acids. And all that is going to be stimulated by, the particle size that we have in the feed. Then, when the feed leaves the gizzard, it is going to enter the small intestine. And then the length of the small intestine is going to be about 1.4 meters in an adult bird. And the first part is going to form the duodenal loop. And then I'm going to discuss this again later, but embedded in the loop is the pancreas, which secretes pancreatic juice containing digestive enzymes. Some of the enzymes secreted by the pancreas are going to be amylases, lipases, and proteases. So the amylases are going to help to break down starches, the lipases are going to help to break down fats, and then the proteases are going to help to break down protein. The function of the small intestine is going to be nutrient digestion and absorption. And also remember this, the small intestine is going to be divided into three parts. The duodenum, which comprises the duodenal loop. Then you have the jejunum, and then the ileum. And how we separate the ileum from the jejunum is the Meckel's diverticulum, and this is where the yolk is attached to. So as the feed leaves the gizzard and enters the first part of the small intestine, is going to enter the duodenum, and then here bicarbonate from the pancreas increases the pH to around 6. This helps to prevent inactivation of digestive enzyme. Something that I didn't mention in the previous is in one of the previous slides is that the pH, in the proventriculus can be around 2.5. Then the pH in the gizzard is going to be around 4.5. So this bicarbonate, coming from the pancreas, is going to help to increase that pH that was 4.5 in the gizzard to around 6 in the duodenum. And then there is going to be some reflux of content from the duodenum into the gizzard. This is part of the normal reverse peristalsis that occurs, in the chicken's intestine. And this is important to re-expose the digesta to additional grinding, as well as more pepsin and hydrochloric acids coming from the proventriculus. All this is going to help with the digestion and absorption of nutrients. And nutrient hydrolysis and absorption takes place in the duodenum. A good example of nutrient hydrolysis will be the hydrolysis of protein into amino acid and then the absorption of those amino acids. Another very important organ is the pancreas, and as you can see in that picture, it's going to be very similar in birds. It lies within the duodenal loop of the small intestine, and the pancreas is going to be secreting some pancreatic juices that passes to the duodenum through pancreatic ducts. And approximately 98% of the pancreatic cells produce digestive enzymes. And then these enzymes that are secreted by the pancreas help with the digestion of the nutrients. So amylases, as I mentioned before, to break down starches, lipases for break down fats, and proteases to break down proteins. However, and something that I probably need to remember to tell you is like there are different type of proteases. So there could be trypsin. You probably have heard trypsin before, chymotrypsin, carbopeptidase A and B, and then these proteases, they have different specificity for different amino acids. And the pancreatic juice also contains bicarbonates, and as I mentioned before, these bicarbonates helps to neutralize the acid coming from the proventriculus. Another important organ in the digestive system is going to be the liver, and the liver is important for bile secretion. And then this bile helps to facilitate the digestion of fats by forming emulsions or micelles. And as you can see in the picture, you can see in green, you can see the gallbladder. And this gallbladder stores the bile produced by the liver. Then the bile ducts secretes bile to the duodenum, and this helps with fat emulsification. And all this improves the absorption of fats, fat-soluble vitamins, and calcium by forming these emulsions. So moving to the next part of the digestive system, we have the jejunum and the ileum, and this is where like the small intestine is where the feed's nutrients become usable nutrients and they are absorbed. And throughout the small intestine, there are some finger-like projections called the villi, and that's where nutrients are absorbed. However, the other important thing is like I was telling you that like the pancreas produces amylases to break down starches. There are a lot of brush border enzymes that help to break down carbohydrates as well. And then once that these nutrients are broken down, then they are absorbed by the portal veins, which carries all the nutrients absorbed to the liver. This is, what we call a first pass metabolism. So towards the end of the digestive system, we are going to have the ceca and the colon. And the ceca is located in the union of the small intestine and the large intestine. The function of the ceca will be to absorb water and the production of short-chain fatty acids. And the cica is going to contain a lot of microflora, a lot of bacteria there, and a healthy cica is going to be more resistant to the colonization by salmonella. And then we have the colon, which digests, which is store the digesta, and this is a main site of secretion and absorption of water and electrolytes. And here the solid waste is mixed with uric acids coming from the kidney, and it is excreted simultaneously. And also the reproductive tracts come out here. So in summary, some of the digestive organs of birds are different than mammals. They lack teeth, but they have a gizzard as a grinding organ. They also have a crop that they use to store the feed that prevents to collect the feed and move away. It's an evolutionary adaptation. Birds have a short gastrointestinal tract. They evolved to fly, but they have a really strong reverse peristalsis to help maintain this feed in the gut for a longer period of time, to have more time to break down those nutrients and then absorb them. The proventriculus is the glandular stomach and is the one responsible to produce acids and enzymes like pepsin. And the gizzard is the muscular stomach and the pacemaker of intestinal motility. These organs are fundamental for digestion and intestinal health.